President-elect Donald Trump made the Supreme Court a top campaign issue, vowing to nominate justices in the mold of the late Antonin Scalia. His election means that seat, vacant now for 9 months, will almost certainly be filled by a conservative, and that could be just the start. With aging justices and lower court vacancies, our next president may reshape the court for decades. Joining us now with some insight are Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, and Elizabeth Wydra, President of the Constitutional Accountability Center. Good to see you both.
Great to be with you.
Elizabeth, how much does this election impact everything from the Supreme Court on down, the judiciary as a whole?
Yeah, this was a huge election for the judiciary. You know, people would say the Supreme Court was on the ballot, and it really was. In the near term, you know, there isn't going to be a huge impact on the court because with even a Trump-filled vacancy seat, the one that Merrick Garland was nominated for, we're essentially getting back to the pre-Scalia's passing status quo with a conservative majority, but still with swing votes like Justice Kennedy and sometimes Chief Justice Roberts, who can side with the more liberal justices and give progressive victories like we saw in the marriage equality case, some of the abortion cases. So I think that in the near term, there's going to be an impact for sure. I mean, progressives like me, we were hoping to wake up to looking forward to a progressive majority on the Supreme Court. So, you know, absolutely it does mean an entrenched conservative majority. But the real impact will be if there are more vacancies opening up in the next few years, possibly Justice Ginsburg, Breyer, or Kennedy himself, then there will be a huge impact on the court with a really strong conservative majority that could do things like overturn Roe versus Wade, something that the majority of people in this country think that women should have the right to choose an abortion. So that's when we get into the big changes on the court.
And by the way, Justice Ginsburg, as we all know, has a serious workout regimen. I mean, she is tough, she is in shape, she is there, mentally sharp. I mean, no signs that she's planning at any time.
She's playing at top of her game.
She is, but well into her 80s, and other justices in that same neighborhood, Tom. I mean, this president, like any president, could have 2 or 3 openings.
That's exactly right. President Trump may have more than one appointment to the Supreme Court. And the other thing to keep in mind is that he's going to be filling the lower courts. There are dozens of district court vacancies, federal court of appeals vacancies, and these are the courts that actually decide the vast majority of litigation in the United States. And so when we look ahead to the next 4, possibly 8 years, President Trump is going to have a massive impact on the judiciary in the United States.
Are you guys used to those words yet, President Trump? I still feel like it's so fresh that it's, I mean, of course we're saying president-elect, but I think that a lot of people looking to this election just a week ago would not have foreseen this outcome and the ripple effect that it's going to have in the federal courts. I thought an interesting stat in some of the exit polls, there were a lot of people who said this was a top or the top priority for them, but the people who said that the Supreme Court was their top issue, look at this. 56% broke for Donald Trump, 41% for Hillary Clinton. I mean, Elizabeth, do you think our campaign could have done more to emphasize the importance of this?
You know, I actually do. I think that conservatives have understood for a long time the importance of the courts. And, you know, look, you can win elections, you can get laws passed, but basically these things live or die when it comes to the end of the day in the courts. You know, we saw progressives like myself worked hard for the Affordable Care Act, and then it, you know, came to the Supreme Court, which upheld it. So
multiple times.
Exactly. So I feel like conservatives have understood this for a long time. Progressives, I think, are catching up to understanding just how important the courts are for preserving civil rights, making sure that equality is a reality for Americans of all colors, creeds. And so I think that, you know, it's an issue. It's going to be even more of an issue as we see the lower courts being filled with conservative judges. And I think that when people start to see some rulings that they think are overly extreme, then they might be concerned. But no matter what, the judicial branch will be an important check in the next few years. And I think there might be conservative justices who are put on the bench who are more traditionally conservative and not as perhaps authoritarian as a President Trump might be, and they could serve as a check, especially if there are threats to constitutional structure.
Yeah, and we've seen, Tom, over the last few years that even the 2 justices that President Obama appointed, they've ruled against him. I mean, they've been a check on some things that they didn't think were right for him to do, or some constitutional boundaries. Same could be true of a president?
That's exactly right. You can't guarantee that just because a justice is appointed by a president that justice is necessarily going to rule in the president's favor in all cases. I will say this, though, is that I agree with Elizabeth's point at the outset that this election is a total, complete, massive game changer as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Republicans care about the court, conservatives care about the court, and when we look at that list of 21 individuals, possible nominees that Donald Trump proposed, that is a great list. you're not going to go too far wrong choosing someone from that list.
I see a smile on Tom's face. You're going to get there. There'll be a smile. Everybody needs time to recover after elections when it didn't go the way that you had planned. But we'll see what happens with the court, because it's going to be one of his very first, very big decisions that conservatives who say they went out and vote for him for that reason alone are going to want to hold his feet to the fire on that. So we'll see. Good to see you both. I'll see you both at the court.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Shannon.
coming in.